Hey guys, Pluto here, and welcome back to another Java programming tutorial video. Sorry it has been a bit since I have posted. I have been really busy working on a game called Innocent Dream, and actually, you know what? We can do a little shameless self-promotion here. And we can go to this webpage. This link will be in the description. And this is a link to a GameJolt page that has my game on it. So currently it is in very early development. Um, Granted, it's only in the very first test version, and this test version has a huge amount of bugs. Like, say, well, just a lot of bugs. The collision detection is terrible. Um, a lot of it's there's barely any good in that version. It's just that I needed to test to make sure it worked on other devices before I went ahead. It does work on other devices. I did have to make a few changes though. But anyway, I post devlogs here at least once a day, if not more than once. And then I will be posting screenshots. So I will also may occasionally post devlog videos on this channel, but if I don't, then they will be on here because I'm working on this a lot. So yeah, be sure to check this out. Maybe follow it so that you can tell when there's a new version. Anyway, let's get into the programming today because it's been a while since I've done one of these videos. So today we will be going over data storage, the file class, and the properties class. Now these are three of the most common ways to store data in your application, because if you notice that when you create an application and say you set a variable, that variable is only there as long as the application is running. Once you close the application, that variable is no longer there. When you rerun the application, resets to what it was. So say we had a string x equals hi. Then we had a short scanner that would get from the system input, and then we set x to scanner.next line, and then we're gonna print out we are going to print out x. So say we did that. If you were to run it, you would, of course, have to make that. But if you were to run it, you would get, oh wait, hold on. I was doing so well. And then I forgot to print it out the first time. Okay, now we can rerun it. So you see it would print out hi. And then you could type something in. It would print out that, and then the process would finish. But say you were to run it again, then it still prints out hi again. Now, of course, say we set it to this, then we do that, and then we close, and then we just don't give that a value. Well, then that's going to give us an error because it's not initialized. So it's pretty much impossible without storing the data somewhere. So even if we were to set it to nothing, it would say nothing, and then you would do that. So that's pretty much why yeah. So, but if you run just any normal application, you notice it saves like your settings and whatnot. That is because it is, well, saving them in a file somewhere. So the first thing we will be learning about is the file class. So since it's a class, of course, you're going to need to import it. So import java.io.file. Then with this, you can make a variable of it. So we're just going to say file and then a new file. Now here it'll ask you for a string, and this is the file path. So there are two different types of file paths I need to talk about. So here we are in Paint because I need to go over some stuff before we get started. So the first thing, well, of course, the thing we're going over right now is the two different types of file paths in Java. That's not what I want. is the different types of file paths in Java, because there are, I mean, they're pretty much the same. So if you're using Windows, then of course you have like C, sorry about this, it's terrible, C/users slash your name slash whatever, um, which is the pretty much default file path. And that's how you can specify a file path as a string, C/whatever/whatever slash however far you want to go with it. But the problem is it's not always going to be the same path depending on like who's using it, of course. Like say you were storing something in the user folder, say for you, it's C/users/your name, but then for someone else it's going to be a different path because they don't have the same username as you. So there's another easier way, and that's relative file paths, because in Java, when specifying a file path, you can just say like folder A slash folder B slash folder C, and what that will do is that would go into the folder that the program is running in. So if you're running in IntelliJ, it'd be in here, and then to go in directory A, and then B, and then it'd go in there. So you can use relative file paths to store stuff in the same folder as where the program is being executed from. So like, say you turn the program into a .exe file, then that folder would be wherever that .exe file happens to be located. So you can use either of these. I prefer relative file paths, although it does make it tricky when you want it to be in a certain spot, but we'll get into that later. So I'm just going to say the file is going to be file.txt. So when creating a file, you technically don't have to specify an extension, but then it won't give it an extension and you'll just be left with an extensionless file. And yeah, now the extension does not decide how Java reads it. Java reads it how you tell how you tell Java to read it, if that makes any sense. So like, just because this says .txt doesn't mean Java is going to read it as a txt file. Java is going to read it how you specify the file. So after you have this, as you notice, there is no file.txt in here. And if we run this, then of course it finishes, but like there's still no file, because even though you're creating a new file variable, it does not create a new file. This file is just a reference to the actual file. So you can test, say, if file.exists. This will return true if that file exists and false if it doesn't. So we're just going to add an exclamation point to invert that. So basically this is, if the file does not exist, run this code. So then we would say file.create new file. Now you may notice, there's this yellow around it. I find that pretty annoying. And I pretty much most of the time I just end up turning that off. But basically, the yellow is telling you that the result of this method is being ignored because create new file returns a Boolean. But we'll get into that later. The main thing is this red line. This red line is talking about a possible exception. Now, an exception in Java is pretty much like an error, except it is not a fatal error. It is an error that can be handled and dealt with in the code, and the code can keep running. So by pressing either Alt-Enter in IntelliJ or just hitting right-click or show context actions, if you're in IntelliJ again, you can either add the message to add the exception to method signature, which I do not recommend, or you can say surround with try catch. I recommend using try catch. Although if you are making like an external library for someone, then you should use add to method signature. But you should never add an exception to the main method signature, in my opinion, because then you're not the one dealing with this and Java is going to deal with that error, that exception, how it feels like it. So I recommend using try catch. That way you control what happens if something goes wrong here. So basically, if for some odd reason it cannot create a new file, then what's in here will be called, and it'll print out a stack trace. basically it'll print out the exception that happened. So it would be java.io IO exception, and then it would say the reason, whatever happened. Don't actually type this. This is just an example. Um, just gonna add that there. And then it would say at, and then a path, say io.pluto.main dot, then the method, so main, and then here it would say the line of code that it happened, so 13. So and it'll trace this all the way back to the exact main method that called this, and it would say this the exact number of times it needed to get back to this main method. Sorry if that's confusing. You'll see what I mean if I can. Yeah, here's what I'll do to show you. I will delete this. I will say throw new IO exception uh, example. So what this is going to do, this is showing you what an exception is. You say it's java.io exception, so it prints out the trace to this class, and then whatever the reason is. And then it prints out a stack trace to wherever this was called. So io.pluto.main.main, then main.java13, so right here. So then we could very well, if we add more methods, throw, oh yeah, th, whatever, throws, no, I'm just going to say throw new IO exception, whatever. Then say we called this, we could say public, no, we could say thr, and then we can surround this in try catch. And then what would happen, so I delete this. So then what would happen here is we would run the code and it would say that, but then it adds another line because it's in here, but then this method was called by this method here. So that's how stack traces work. Sorry about that little tangent. I just had to cover that. So now we can re-add file.create new file now that you understand that, and surround that with try catch. So now what we do is if we run this, there we go, and we have file.txt right here. It's just an empty file. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create what's called a file writer. Now, this is the easiest way to store data in a file, and we will be passing in our file. This also has an exception, so we are going to surround that in try catch. And then we could say writer.write, and then hello, writer.close. Do not forget writer.close. If you do not close it, it will not save the file. Close is basically save the file and stop writing to it. So then what happens is the file already exists, so it does not create a new one. But if we open up this, it now says hello. So we have just successfully written a piece of text to a file. So you can do this easily just by adding more and more of these. Then if we do this, the thing is, but what this will do is it'll have them all together. So you will need to add /n, 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 and this is basically new line. So it has to be \n at the end of every one of those. And now if we take a look at it, there we go. So another thing is, if you notice, each time we run this, it's not adding on to it, it's just rewriting the entire file. So then what you want to do is if you say you want to add on to it instead, you can in here add comma space true, and that will turn on append mode. And then instead of writer.write, you can just quickly write don't worry about what I just did there. So I was just replacing all these rights with append. So this is what it looks like right now. Then if we add here, and then we reopen this, it's double the length. So this will add on to the file instead of just rewriting it. So the next thing is we're going to learn how to read a file. So we still have our file over here and testing if it exists and writing to it. But now there are two ways we can do it. We can use a file reader, or we can use the scanner that we use to get the user input. I prefer the scanner, so we're going to do this because then we can read it line by line. So new scanner, but instead of saying system.in, like normally we would do system.in and we would get the output from here. But this time we are going to give it that file. And now you notice that it has that because just in case you can't find the file. So now what we would do is we would say while scanner dot has next line. So this is basically going to loop as long as there's another line. Then we're going to say string data equals scanner dot next line. And then we're going to system.out.print that data. So then what we're going to, oh, that's not what I wanted to do. So then we are going to just add some random stuff to this file. I don't know if you can hear that spamming of my keyboard or not. There we go. Now we have that. So now if we run this, we're actually going to delete this because we don't need that anymore. So if we run this, then you notice it prints out everything that was inside of the file because we basically just went line by line through the file and printed out everything. So I find this pretty helpful because then you can just go line by line and that's pretty much a scanner. So the next thing we're going to be learning about is the properties class. Okay, so now we are going to learn about the properties class. Now this is an easy way to store settings for your application. So I have a file here because this is still pretty much file based. And we're going to say file equals new file, config.properties. And of course we're going to do if not file.exists, then we're going to say file.create new file, surround with try catch. And don't forget semicolon. There we go. So now we make sure that this file exists. Then what we want to do is we want to create a new properties variable. So properties p equals new properties. And then what we can do is we can create try because we're doing a file reader. So I went over scanners. These are pretty much similar, except the scanners usually read text, I guess. So reader equals new file reader. We can give it our file. Now, a little thing I didn't tell you about try catch is you can use these, and this will create a final variable inside of here. And if you want to create more than one, just add a semicolon and another variable, say file writer, whatever. So then, of course, we need to add catch clause and collapse those. So now we have a reader, and what we're going to do is we're going to do p dot load and pass in our reader. Now what this is going to do is it is going to basically load the contents of this supposed non-existent file into the properties. Now of course if there's nothing there, there's going to be no properties to load. So what we're going to do is we're going to move this up here, and in here we're going to say p dot put, and this allows us to say, so the key would be like the setting name, so like full screen, although there's no window, and then a value, true. So then you could say p dot put whatever false. And it doesn't have to be just true or false. It could literally be pretty much anything and it would still work. So basically what we're doing is if this file does not exist, we're giving it some properties. And we're just going to add a little else around here. So basically, if the file exists, we're going to give it some properties. Well, no, if the file does not exist, we're going to create a new file, and then we're going to give this property some properties. And if it does exist, then we're going to load the properties from the file. So then we have this, and we can call string s equals p.get or get property, and then we could say whatever, and it will basically get the property with the name whatever, and it'll return whatever we set. And then we could just say system.out.print s, and then that would print out the property. So then, of course, what we want to do is we want to save these properties. So first, we're going to just add some new, we're going to say whatever equals hello, and we're going to say full screen equals that. And then, of course, we want to save these properties now. So now what we're going to do is we're going to call another try catch with the parentheses. We're going to say FileWriter, writer, just like we just learned, new FileWriter, file. And then, of course, add the catch clause. And then we can say p.store, and then we can pass in this writer. And then, of course, you need to add some sort of comments. You don't have to. You can just leave it a blank string. But if you want to say, hello, these are comments, just a little message, then you can do that. And then it will store that inside of the file. And now if we run this, that's kind of confusing, but if we run this, it prints out that because that's what we set to whatever. It resets whatever to hello, and we get config.properties right here. And the comments are on the first line where we said, hello, these are the comments. Hello, these are the comments. Well, these are comments. And then we have full screen, this thing we put right here, and then whatever equals hello because that's what we put right here. So that is properties. And then if we were to say run this again, now that the file exists, we can load the properties, and instead of printing out this thing, it prints out hello because that's what it actually equaled. So that's properties. So that's pretty much the data storage in the file class. So now we can get into things like better games that actually store information. So like say a high score or just stuff like that. So again, I think you should. So thank you so much for watching. Also be sure to check out the link in the description for the game development because I will be updating that once a week. I will post new versions. And then also check out other links. Like check out Twitter, my Twitter, because I post just random stuff there sometimes. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and in the next episode, what will we be doing? What do you think we'll be doing? Well, according to my plans, in our next episode, will be creating a text adventure game. So like you say go left and the player goes left. Of course there's no GUI because we have not learned that yet, but we will be creating a simple text adventure. Then we will be ready to learn how to package and share our games and apps for other people to use. So again, thanks so much for watching and goodbye.